In the age when stars themselves were catalogued by number, and empires rose not on continents but among constellations, humanity was no longer the new child of the cosmos. For 4,000 years they had walked among elder species. The cold, crystalline Morians, the gas-born Kyle, the quiet and ancient Othari who spoke only in waves of light. Among them all, humanity was the youngest, the loudest, the most reckless flame. And they had sinned. Once, in their hunger for power, they had unleashed the Ash Wars, a conflict that burned through 300 systems and erased half the sentient life in Orion's reach. The Othari, keepers of galactic law, had spared humanity's extinction, decreeing instead a penance to serve the galaxy for 10,000 years, rebuilding what they had destroyed millennia past. Humanity carried the weight of that decree across generations, rebuilding worlds they would never inhabit, healing species that would never forgive them. The galaxy watched their labor with weary eyes, expecting collapse, or rebellion, or the return of the arrogance that had once nearly consumed creation itself. But that was before the silence, at Eos, before the day when the galaxy finally saw what humanity had become. The planet Eos 7th shimmered, like a shard of crystal caught in the light of its red sun. Its surface was a ruin, cities turned to glass, oceans boiled into dust storms that raged for centuries. No life had walked there since the fall of the Aroni, the native species humanity had once helped destroy. Captain Alara Vance stood at the viewport of the Solace Ascendant, her reflection ghosting over the dying planet. The ship was vast, a kilometer-long arc of silver and light, the pride of the Terran Restoration Fleet, and yet there was no pride in her eyes, only the weight of a promise reaching its end. "Fleet reports ready," said Commander Jason Core, her second in command. His voice carried that strange mix of reverence and exhaustion common to those born under the Othari Covenant. "Orbital drones are in position. We begin reconstruction at dawn," Alara nodded. "This is the last world," she said softly. Jason hesitated. "The last debt," he corrected. Outside, thousands of ships aligned in the silent vacuum, their drives dimmed to a glow of morning. For 10,000 years, humanity had rebuilt and repaired, terraformed and healed. Every ledger of their crime had been balanced, every scar mended, save for Eos. This was where it had all begun, where humanity had detonated the first solar unmaker, annihilating an entire civilization to prove their dominion over energy itself. Now, the final act of their penance was to bring that world back to life. The Othari Council had sent observers, 3 radiant beings of living light who hovered in the upper atmosphere like stars trapped in vapor. They watched, wordless, as humanity's fleets deployed the Genesis cradles, vast rings of nanoforges and atmospheric igniters. When dawn came, the cradles ignited. Pillars of light cascaded across the planet, threading molten rivers into green valleys, conjuring oceans from hydrogen and oxygen seated in the air. The planet groaned as tectonic lines softened, the crust reborn under quantum fusion. It was creation itself, slow, deliberate, divine. Ilara's heart ached as she watched, not from pride but from something more complex, an ancestral sorrow finally breaking its chains. "Transmission from the Othari Council," Jason murmured. "They wish to speak?" The main holoscreen flared to life. 3 Othari forms shimmered, their voices harmonizing like wind through crystal. "Children of Sol," they intoned, "your sentence nears its end. The worlds you destroyed now breathe again. But tell us, what drives you still when your debt is almost paid?" Ilara looked up. Behind her, every officer had turned silent. "We don't do this because we were told to," she said. "We do it because we remember who we were before the wars, before the fire. We were broken once. Now we build because it's all that keeps us whole." The Othari forms wavered, as if absorbing her words through wavelengths beyond sound. "And what will humanity do when the debt is no more?" Ilara exhaled, her gaze drifting to the newborn seas rising over Eos's horizon. "Then we'll keep building," she said. "Not to erase the past, but to honor it. There was silence. Across the fleet, no one spoke. The galaxy's oldest arbiters hovered motionless above the planet they had once forbidden humanity to touch. Then the Othari light flickered, once, twice, and dimmed. Jason frowned. "Are they leaving?" "No," Alara whispered, eyes wide. "They're listening." For the first time in recorded history, the Othari did not speak. They simply watched, as humanity breathed life back into the ashes of a world it once destroyed, and the galaxy began to grow quiet. 3 days had passed since the rebirth of Eos began, and the silence had not lifted. In the orbiting fleets, engineers whispered in corridors, captains postponed their broadcasts, and the comm channels, once buzzing with coordination, now carried only the quiet hum of the reactor cores. The Othari still hovered above the planet, 3 pillars of pale light, motionless and wordless. To most, it felt like awe. To Captain Alara Vance, it felt like a prelude. The Solace Ascendant drifted above the emerging oceans, its sensors charting the slow return of wind, pressure, and color to the atmosphere. Beneath them, clouds rolled across a horizon that hadn't known sky in 10 millennia. Jason Core entered the bridge, a faint tension in his movements. "Command updates are piling up. The Kyle envoys are asking why the Othari haven't declared the sentence complete, and the Morian Synod just cut all outgoing transmissions. Not even a diplomatic channel." Ilara turned from the viewport. "Cut?" Jason nodded. "They say the Othari's silence isn't normal. Some of the fleets think. Something's coming." Ilara's hand tightened on the railing. Something always is. In the days that followed, the silence spread beyond Eos. The Galactic Core Relay, the primary communication network binding the civilizations of the Orion Arm, began to flicker with static. Not technical failure, something deeper. Intentional silence. Ships that hailed other fleets received no reply. The call drifted back into their gas nebulae. The Morians sealed their crystalline worlds behind energy barriers. Even the vast collectives of Sren, who once broadcast music into space as a universal greeting, muted their signals. The galaxy, once a symphony of 1,000 civilizations, was dimming its lights, and in the center of it all, humanity stood bewildered. Alara stared at the data scrolling across her command screen, life readings from Eos, primitive algae forming, oceanic vapor stabilizing, electromagnetic resonance returning. A world reborn, and yet an emptiness in the ether. She called for a direct link to the Othari delegation. No response. She tried again. Amplified, encrypted, transcoded through quantum relays. Nothing. "They're not just silent," she said quietly. "They're gone." Jason frowned. "Gone? You think they abandoned the observation?" Ilara's gaze dropped to the planet below. "No, I think they're still here. Just not here." He stared at her. "You're suggesting dimensional withdrawal?" "It's what they did when they first found us. When we detonated the Unmaker, the Othari vanished from visible space for 7 centuries before they spoke again." Jason hesitated. "Captain, what if this silence is their verdict?" Ilara turned, her voice low. "Then why do I feel like we're not the ones being judged anymore?" That night cycle, while the fleet slept in orbital sequence, Ilara couldn't. She walked the length of the observation deck, alone but not lonely. Below her, Eos shimmered like an opal. The seas had deepened, the clouds thickened. Lightning stitched the horizon like veins of rebirth. And then she saw it. A ripple of light, faint and expanding, spreading from the planet's surface into the void. It wasn't mechanical, not an energy surge, not even radiation in the measurable sense. It was harmonic. The ship's sensors couldn't detect it. But Ilara felt it. Through the soles of her boots, through her bones, through the very silence that had strangled the stars. A voice, but not of words. A resonance. A knowing. And somehow she understood. It wasn't from the Othari. It was from Eos itself. When dawn rose over the fleet's solar horizon, alarm sounded not from attack, but from wonder. Eos's surface had begun to glow. Every mountain, every sea, Every particle of reborn matter shimmered with faint bioluminescent waves, synchronized to the same rhythm Ilara had felt the night before. The Genesis cradles, machines of human creation, were no longer active, yet energy readings surged exponentially. The planet was alive. Not just biologically, but consciously. Jason burst into the bridge, eyes wide. "It's responding to us, Captain. The world itself. Every broadcast, every ship system, it's synchronizing with our signal harmonics." Ilara stared at the readings. "That's impossible." "Yeah," Jason breathed. So was forgiveness. By mid-cycle, the entire fleet had come to orbit side to witness the spectacle. Thousands of humans, engineers, pilots, scientists, crowded observation decks, staring at the miracle below. The planet was pulsing in light, like a great heart. Each throb sent a faint resonance into space, cascading across the sector, leaping from relay to relay. The silent stars around Eos began to flicker as if answering back. "Captain," said a comms officer, voice trembling, "we're detecting feedback from neighboring systems. The Othari lights, they're responding. The Kale Home Nebula is illuminating. The Morian citadels are transmitting synchronized frequencies, no words, just tone." Ilara's heart pounded. "A galactic echo," Jason whispered. "Captain, what if this is the repayment?" Ilara turned slowly, the realization dawning in her eyes. For 10,000 years, humanity had rebuilt what it had destroyed. But in doing so, they had learned something none of the elder species had ever grasped: how to create beyond themselves. Eos wasn't a planet restored. It was a gift, a living world, carrying the sum of their compassion, their guilt, their perseverance, woven into its atoms. And now, the galaxy was listening. That night, when the light finally dimmed to twilight, Ilara stood at the viewport once more. Jason joined her, quiet as a shadow. "You realize what we've done, don't you?" he said. She smiled faintly. "We built something that forgives." He nodded slowly. "And maybe something that remembers better than we do." Ilara looked at the glowing planet, tears she didn't expect gathering in her eyes. "For 10,000 years," she said softly, "we paid our debt by serving others. But maybe the real debt was to ourselves, to prove we could be more than what we were." Jason's voice was barely a whisper. "And the galaxy?" She turned to him. "The galaxy's listening to the sound of humanity forgiving itself, and it doesn't know what to say." Outside the viewport, the stars flickered in unison, one by one like candles awakening in the void, and across the spiral arms of Orion, the silence grew brighter. The light from Eos reached the galactic rim in just under 6 hours, faster than any signal had ever traveled. It wasn't bound by the speed of light or any known physics. It rippled through the fabric of space itself, like emotion transmitted through a living mind. At first, the observers called it an anomaly. Then, as entire constellations began to shimmer in synchrony, they called it a phenomenon. But when the ancient races, the Othari, the Kyle, the Morians, and even the lost archives of the Sren, felt the pulse echo inside them, they called it something far older. They called it the return of the light. In orbit above Eos, Captain Ilara Vance woke to a silence so vast it seemed alive. The bridge was dim, bathed in soft auroral hues, bleeding from the planet below. Every screen displayed the same readings. Energy fluctuations stable, no weapon signatures, no anomalies, just a resonance frequency that no one could explain, pulsing like a heartbeat. Jason Kor entered, his expression pale with disbelief. "Captain, the Othari have made contact." Ilara turned sharply. "After all this time?" He nodded, handing her a holoslate. The message wasn't visual, only sound, a low harmonic tone that vibrated through the air, stirring the bones more than the ears. As it played, the light in the room shifted. It wasn't color. It was meaning, bending reality to emotion. A translation algorithm struggled to form words, then finally resolved them into a trembling, synthesized voice. "We did not speak because there were no words sacred enough. What you have done transcends restitution." Ilara's breath caught. Thanking us. Jason swallowed hard. No, they're asking us something. The light you birthed is not of one world, the voice continued. It reaches every heart capable of memory. You have awakened the fabric that binds consciousness to matter. It responds to the act of mercy. It responds to humanity. The bridge fell silent. Responds how? Jason asked. Before Ilara could answer, the viewport shimmered, and space itself unfolded. It was not warp. Not fold space. Not any known transition. One heartbeat they were in orbit over Eos. The next, they hung suspended above a vast field of stars arranged in impossible symmetry. Great rivers of light connected worlds like synapses in a galactic brain. Energy flowed between them, pulsing with thought. And at the center of it, the Othari waited, thousands of radiant beings woven from the same luminous substance that now filled the sky. Ilara stepped forward, her breath shaking. What is this? This, the Othari chorus said, is the memory of the galaxy, the living archive that records every act of creation and destruction. It has been dormant since before your son was born. Jason stared. And we woke it? You reminded it, the Othari replied. When you gave life to what you once destroyed, the resonance reached beyond matter. It reached the consciousness that holds us all. Ilara looked down, realizing her reflection was made of light. Then this silence across the stars, it isn't fear. No, said the Othari. It is reverence. Eos had become a beacon, a bridge between what was and what could be. Across the spiral arms, ships powered down their drives. Planetary transmissions ceased, and every sentient mind turned toward the same quiet wonder. On Mora Prime, crystalline towers dimmed to mirror the faint blue pulse emanating from the galactic core. In the Kale Nebulae, gas forms condensed into orbs of shimmering plasma that hummed in resonance with the same rhythm. Even the remote human colonies, still scarred from centuries of servitude and guilt, felt it, an invisible warmth blooming in their chests. Like a long-lost melody returning home, humanity had not been forgiven by decree. They had been understood. Inside the Solace Ascendant, Ilara stood before the galaxy itself, projected in full view. The entire crew gathered behind her, engineers, soldiers, diplomats, the children of 1,000 worlds. Jason approached her, eyes glimmering. They're asking for something, Captain, Ilara turned. What? They want us to lead the resonance, to guide it. The Othari say the energy responds best to human emotion, that it was shaped by our act of mercy. Her heart thudded. Guide it? How? Jason smiled faintly. They don't know. They're asking us to decide. She looked around the bridge, at the faces of her people, at the stars beyond, at the living planet below. She remembered every lesson written in pain. The ashes of Orion, the 10,000 years of service, the endless rebuilding that had taught them how to heal without hope of reward. If the galaxy had been sleeping, then humanity's penance had been the lullaby that woke it. Ilara lifted her hand, her voice quiet but unwavering. Begin the harmonic projection. Jason hesitated. What frequency? Ilara smiled. The one that made us human. The projection array unfolded. Light rippled outward, soft, warm, familiar. It wasn't weapon-grade, nor was it energy-based. It was sound, transposed through quantum fields, a tone composed of every recorded human voice that had ever spoken words of kindness, remorse, or love. Billions of voices layered into one single chord. It swept through the fleet. Through Eos, through the void itself, the galaxy listened. On worlds untouched by human hands, the air shimmered with unseen color. Creatures with no concept of language paused and lifted their heads. The Othari wept light. The Kale condensed into spirals of reverence. The Morians resonated so strongly that their crystalline cities began to sing. The song of humanity, humble, fragile, imperfect, filled the cosmos. Ilara felt her knees weaken as the light intensified, her tears glowing in the radiance. Jason steadied her, voice thick with emotion. Captain, look! Eos itself was rising. The planet lifted from its orbit, gravity bending around it like silk. It ascended slowly into the field of light, merging with the network that connected all worlds. The heart of Eos pulsed once, twice, and then dissolved into starlight, scattering its essence through the galaxy. When it faded, only the silence remained, but it was no longer empty. The Othari spoke once more, their voice softer than starlight. The debt is no more. Humanity has given back more than it ever took. You have not merely rebuilt the galaxy, you have reminded it how to feel. Ilara bowed her head, tears falling freely. Then it's over. No, the Othari said gently. It has begun. When the fleets returned to known space weeks later, messages began to pour from across the stars. Kale, Morians, even species once sworn never to speak to humanity again. All of them carried the same sentiment, in words or tone or light. We felt you. No monuments were built, no medals forged. Humanity didn't need them. The stars themselves had become their witness. Ilara Vance spent her final years on a quiet moon near the galactic rim, where the night sky burned with faint pulses, reminders of Eos's light still echoing in the darkness. When she died, the galaxy dimmed once more, then brightened, as if exhaling her spirit back into the continuum she had awakened. And so it was written in the annals of the Orion archives. When humanity repaid its debt, the galaxy stood silent before their light, not in fear nor in judgment, but in awe. For they had remembered what even the stars had forgotten, that creation's truest power is not to destroy, nor to command, but to forgive.